Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Cause TV and the Cause Green audio experience. On tonight's episode, we'll explore the Mrs. America pageant program and meet the reigning Mrs. Utah America. In 1985, I emceed the Midvale Junior Miss pageant alongside Boyd Twiggs. Now, I'd grown up watching the Miss America pageant as a kid, and I thought I knew what pageants were all about. But frankly, I was wrong. I attended rehearsals with those young ladies in Midvale for over a month and learned this was a scholarship pageant, and it included more than just looks. It included poise and appearance, talent, and judges' interview. I gained great respect for the pageant program and for the women who compete. My guest tonight currently holds the title of Mrs. Utah America 2023 and is headed to Las Vegas this week to compete against the other 50 states at nationals. She is a dental hygienist, is fluent in Spanish, and has traveled to 21 countries around the world. While it may be an anomaly that she won the first pageant that she ever competed in, she was simply driven to check off a bucket list item and challenge herself just a few months postpartum. My guest is married to the love of her life, McKay, and together they have two little blonde boys as well as an angel baby that inspired her pageant platform, Before the Rainbow. Through her experience, she witnessed an existing gap in support for women suffering miscarriage and stillbirth and is committed to promoting more conversation, community, and compassion on the topic. To this, she has partnered with the nonprofit organization Share Parents of Utah in various projects and has produced the podcast, The Butterfly Broadcast, Stories of Transformation After Pregnancy and Infant Loss. My guest is a world traveler, and she has traveled throughout the world. She got her 6-year bachelor's degree in dental hygiene in under 3 years, where she served as class president. She spent a year and a half in Spain serving her church, where she became fluent in Spanish, which she regularly uses in her work and travel today. Her current travel portfolio says she's been to countries like Dubai, Thailand, Fiji, and Eswatini, Africa. On a personal note, in the summer of 2019, I spent 2 weeks alongside my guest in Eswatini, the former Swaziland, and observed firsthand the incredible love she has for people and the unique way that she touches lives. My friends, help me welcome Baylee Demars. Baylee, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Baylee, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh my goodness, we're frozen.
Hello. Sorry, I'm right here. Can you hear me, Cause? I can see me.
It's been a while. So how are things?
Things are totally different than I had imagined even a year ago. I didn't even think I'd be in a position like this, but here we are and loving every minute of it. And I've just grown so much as a woman and a mother and a wife, and so much since I spent time with you in 2019. So
Gosh, where have the years gone? And you've accomplished so much. So this week you're headed to Vegas. Let's start there a little bit. Tell us about the Mrs. America pageant, what's going on there, and then we'll take a step back, how you even got there, and then more about your platform.
oh, okay, I'd love to talk about it. So When I competed for Mrs. Utah, I just was there to have a good time. Didn't even think that I would ever make it to Mrs. America. So that's just a dream come true. And the reason I even did this was an influencer who I admire a lot. She has 5 million followers on Instagram. Her name is Hannah Nealman, Ballerina Farms. And I watched her journey at Mrs. America. So frankly, I can't believe I'm going. And it's going to be held at the Westgate Hotel, which is where Elvis Presley used to perform. And so the week is 10 days. Well, I guess week. I am there for 10 days. I drive out this Thursday, and the days are full of rehearsals, fancy dinners. Every minute is a fashion show, is a photo op. And then when we get later in the week, we'll have our interviews, which counts for 50% of our score. And it's round robin style. So I sit down with 5 judges and talk to them for like 4 minutes each, just telling them about myself, about my platform. And then I will compete on stage, which my family and friends are going to come see. And those categories are swimsuit, which is 25% of my score, and evening gown, which is a different 25%. And then for fun, we do a costume portion, which is to represent the state you come from. So I come clearly from Utah, so I'm not going to spoil it, but it's something niche about Utah that it's going to be glamorous, going all out, and then, from there, they'll just eliminate until they find their Mrs. America.
That is incredible. Now,
Yeah.
this wasn't something that you've been doing your whole life. Like I mentioned in the introduction, I emceed a junior Miss pageant back in 1985. So I've emceed a lot of different events like this. That's something you haven't been doing since you were a teenager. Tell us the story of how you got here.
Okay. I will say, I'm putting a plug in. When we were at my pageant just now, in March, I was thinking Cause would be a good MC for this. So just know that I think maybe next year I can recruit you. But my story starts in high school. I am from Sandy, Utah, and one of my friends competed in the Miss Sandy pageant. So I went to attend, and like Cause, didn't know anything about pageants other than Miss Congeniality. I think that's a pretty common perspective that people have. And I was just amazed by my friend, just how well-rounded she'd become and how she was shining in like every aspect, in service, in talent, in poise. And I reflected on my own life, and I kind of thought about how I had to grow up really fast. My parents divorced when I was just 8 years old, and I had a sister who was 2 at the time. And that meant that, I felt a responsibility, whether my parents intended it or not. I felt like my job was then to stay home and take care of her. And extracurriculars kind of went out the window. So I didn't develop talents like dance or voice or theater or anything on stage that I just longed for. I was such a dreamer. I was always dreaming I'd have my High School Musical moment or something where Baylee just felt confident. And so I was a senior, and I decided I'm going to go enter the Miss Sandy pageant. And I went to the rehearsal, and I still remember, I wore the one pair of heels that I had, and they said, okay, now you're going to basically just walk in a line, one foot in front of another to make your hips really swing. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got this. I can do this. And then I was kind of sizing up the other girls in the room, and I was like, I could do this. I really could. And then they're like, so Baylee, what's your talent? And that's when I froze. And I'm like, I can make a mean box of mac and cheese. I just didn't know what I could possibly come up with to compete with girls who had been developing talents their whole life. And so I dropped out. And, I've never forgotten that. And I've never felt that satisfaction of, that moment to shine. And I always wanted, when I started dating, I found my husband, I wanted to make him proud of me and be like, that's my wife. And I had to make that happen somehow. So that's when I saw Ballerina Farms compete. And I was like, maybe it's my time. Maybe I can come up with the talent. And then I found out there isn't a talent portion in the Mrs. pageant. So then I'm like, oh, I'm all in. I can learn everything else.
That's incredible. And what was the time period then from the time you made the decision till the time that you were actually on stage doing that?
That is actually really relevant. I signed up the very day I could. I'd been watching the dates. So it was like October 1st of last year, so 2022. And the pageant was in March. So I had just given birth in June. So I was just, like I said, like you said earlier, I was just, I think 4 months postpartum, maybe 3 months postpartum, still recovering from having a baby. I had just gotten cleared from the doctor to start exercising. And I just looked at my husband and I said, can I pay the deposit? And he said, you go for it. And I was like, hey, I'm committed. I can't back out now. I've got skin in the game. And so for the next 6 months, I trained in the gym. I learned the walk. I practiced interview. I basically learned the whole pageant world that I never knew. And it just shows you can learn a lot in 6 months.
Take me to that night when you were crowned Mrs. Utah America. What was going through your mind? What was going through your mind and your heart?
I woke up that morning and it was just the ultimate high. Nothing could tear me down. I was just so proud of myself for being there that I was just full of pure joy. I can't really even describe it, just other than this high on life. And it carried me through the day. Didn't matter how sore my feet were. Didn't even get nervous for some reason, which is out of character. And I was just happy. It was my moment. I looked in the crowd. I made eye contact with my husband. I saw all my friends there standing and cheering. And honestly, the crown wasn't even on my mind. I wasn't thinking, please be me, please be me. That didn't even cross my mind. I was just like, I already won. I'm here. I did this. I won. And so as the elimination started happening, it went from 14 women down to 8. And my name was called. And then it went down to 5 and my name was called. And I was just kind of like, oh, really? Okay. And then I just kept going. And then they narrowed it down to, the top 3, the first runner up, the second runner up, and the winner. And it was just me and me and Mrs. Utah County. And she is a firecracker. I admire her. I met her in the beginning of my journey, and I knew for a fact she was going to win. I was so happy for her. I did not expect to hear my name whatsoever. And so when they said my name, I was in shock. And also, I just wanted to let her have a moment because she accomplished so much to be first runner up. That's a big deal. And so I wanted her to have her moment. And then I was just kind of like floating, and I'm like, what is happening right now? And it was one of the best moments of my life.
You have a platform.
Yeah.
And that platform that you're passionate about, and you're very passionate about your platform. Tell us more about your platform and how that is so personal for you.
Okay. What's funny is when I signed up October 1st, the current Mrs. Utah gave me a call and she said, okay, so what's your platform? And I said, like shoes? I'm like, what's a platform? I remember when my friend competed in Miss Sandy, they had like a cause. And so that was the only memory I had. And And I was like, okay, I think I have the feel of this. And I just remember I went on a walk with my friend that night, and I was just reflecting on my life, and I was like, where do I feel a gap? And I realized I had just had my rainbow baby, which means a baby after loss. The summer prior, I had lost a baby, and I was thinking about how unresolved that was for me and how abandoned I felt. Um, and so I'm like, this is something that could use work. And if anyone else out there feels like I did, there's more I can do so they don't feel this way. They don't feel alone. They don't feel embarrassed, ashamed, or just, silenced. And so I knew that the direction they needed to go was pregnancy and infant loss. So I just Googled what resources are there, because I remember when I walked away from my doctor's office just sobbing, and the emptiest feeling. The last thing he said to me was, we'll see you when you're pregnant again. And he didn't send me with any type of resources. And so, a year later, I'm like, okay, I'm going to look and see what there is. So I Googled what's in Utah, and I found Share Parents of Utah, and never had heard of them before, but I reached out and I just said, I'd like to get involved. I'd like to see what you're about. And I went to one of their events, and I just saw how many people were there. They were doing a walk of remembrance for their babies. And I was like, wait, I'm not as alone as I thought I was. There's people who feel this emptiness and longing to connect with their baby. And as I learned more, I learned about the services they provide. And so I was like, okay, something great is in place. How can I make it better? How can I make it better known? And what can I contribute that's new? And so that's when, actually shortly later, Heidi Aldridge, who Cause knows, reached out to me and invited me to be on her podcast. And that sparked an idea. I'm like, Heidi just lives down the street from me. Maybe she can teach me how to make a podcast. And she taught me, she mentored me, and I decided a podcast is what I could give back. I could create a space for women to talk about their loss. And because, sometimes you just want to talk and feel heard and not judged. And sometimes you just want to hear somebody else talk about it too. So that's what I felt like I've been able to give back. And so far I've interviewed like 25 incredible parents who've taught me so much about their journey and what's lacking and what we can do to make a society more prepared for the parents who lose their babies every day.
So tell us more about the name of the podcast again, then, and how our viewers and listeners can find it.
Yes. So it's actually really symbolic, and it becomes more clear to me every day why this is the perfect name. It's called the Butterfly Broadcast. And at first, it just started off as, butterflies transform, right? They start as a caterpillar, and then they go through an ooey gooey mess, and they become something completely different. And it's beautiful, but butterflies don't even see their own wings. So they don't even realize their beauty and maybe what's changed, but they're completely better off. They have better vision. They have new abilities. And I was just comparing that to, any trial, but specifically losing a baby, life, you're kind of ignorant. You don't realize these things can happen until you're in a position where your pregnancy is silent, or you deliver a baby who, isn't warm and cozy like you anticipated. And it's messy and it's ugly. It's not fun, but you're different. you acquire empathy. You might choose to reach out to somebody else and help them through it. Or, you just are always imprinted by that child. And so that's kind of the format of my podcast. And then as I've met more amazing parents and survivors of loss, I realized so many of them use butterflies as a symbol for their baby because, when they were bearing their sweet child, a butterfly flew across and gave them a moment of hope. So now they wear butterfly necklaces, or, they have butterflies around their house. And it just amazes me more and more every day how symbolic butterflies are. It gives hope. And I just feel very inspired. I'm a believer in God, and I really believe that He's aware of us, and we are given trials for us, and that's part of the purpose we're here on on this earth. And so He's really inspired me to meet different people and become a butterfly myself, because I've had to grow and change in this whole process.
Take us back to when you lost your baby, because that was between Beckham and Swade, correct?
That's right.
You'd had Beckham, who's now 3, and then Swade is 1 now. So it was between your 2 boys. You said you walked into that room of that support group and you realized you weren't alone. Share with me your emotions of when you lost your child and how you felt alone, and what were the other emotions in that broad spectrum of the range. You've talked, and I've heard you talk about, just there was guilt and embarrassment and shame. Walk me through some of those emotions, please.
Happy to. So with my first baby, as a woman, you take on so much responsibility because, it takes 2 to be parents, but it's your physical body that's bringing this baby into the world. And so my first baby, Beckham, came early and therefore had complications, and that brought guilt. And he turned out to be healthy and okay. But I remember feeling, okay, I can't wait to have a do-over and try to do things differently and hopefully just really take care of this baby as if I could control it. And so we felt like it was time to have another baby, and got pregnant and was just thrilled out of our minds. And we had experienced the joy of giving birth and raising a child. So this time we knew more what we were getting, and we were even more excited. And we told our families, we made this big announcement, and we were living in Texas at the time, so my husband could work, and it was just temporary circumstances. So I was tempted to skip my first appointment because I was like, oh, we're in Texas, my provider's in Utah. Maybe it's not worth going to go travel for, so maybe I might just skip it and wait, I'll be home soon and I can just go to the next appointment. But I had this tugging feeling like I needed to go. So we were out there with my little guy, and, I was just so excited talking to the family, like, oh, do you think it's going to be a boy, a girl? So I was 10 weeks at that point, and I had been so sick. And, and as much as that's terrible, it's also great confirmation that, the baby's growing. And so when I showed up to that appointment, I was just anticipating good news. And I had my husband on FaceTime. He was watching the ultrasound, and I just remember the doctor showing me my baby, and I saw the baby, but it was just completely still. And he paused, and it was just quiet, and waited a long time, and just said, "Oh, we'll try something else." And so he got a different machine and was trying something else. And my husband was confused, and he's like, "What's going on?" And I'm choked up, and I already know what happened, but I didn't want to believe it. So I didn't want to say it out loud. And her husband is just, like, tell me what's happening. And so he confirmed that I had a miscarriage and that it wasn't my fault. Perhaps something genetic just didn't line up okay, and that, my body hadn't registered that the baby was no longer viable. And so I remember in that moment feeling betrayed by my body. Why hadn't it warned me? Why did I still feel sick? And I also felt like embarrassed because, my husband was expecting this happy baby, and it felt like it was my fault that I wasn't giving that to him anymore, to our family. And then, like I said earlier, they just basically said, I'm so sorry. We'll see you again later. And the world just went black, and I just was like, I don't know if I can drive home okay. And I was just sobbing, just hysterically crying. And it was hard because even though we shared it with our families, I didn't look really pregnant. And so I just remember I had to go pick up a prescription that was going to put me into labor. And I just remember looking around at the people in the store, and I thinking they have no idea the news I just got. And they don't know how crushed and shattered I am. And when the pharmacist handed me my prescription, and he said, so this is an abortion pill and it will kill your fetus. And of course, that's just probably protocol, something he has to say. But it made me feel like, oh, no, I'm not going to be the one to take responsibility. I did not kill this baby. I wanted this baby. And it was just messy, and then I went home and I didn't realize, how much pain that really was to labor at home by yourself and basically give birth at home to the baby you've grown. And then, I remember even the next day, somebody said to me, so when do you guys think you're going to try for your next child? And I was like, we did. And that was hard because I was like, do I talk about it? Do I make people feel uncomfortable? I'm not looking for pity, but I am looking for someone to tell me that what I'm feeling is normal. So I eventually got the courage just to make a subtle post about it. And I had so many friends reply to me saying, I'm so sorry this happened to me 2 months ago, or I just had one last week, or last year. And I had no idea that these particular friends had felt exactly what I was feeling. And it was very validating to talk to them about the realities of it. And I was like, okay, we need to talk about this, because if we're not, we're just all silently suffering, longing to talk about it, but no one's doing it. And it, I do feel like our culture has become a little bit more comfortable talking about uncomfortable subjects. And so, I think generations ago, that didn't happen. Like, my grandma lost several babies, and she didn't talk about it because just culturally that wasn't acceptable. And I wanted to find more resources, and luckily there are awesome people on Instagram who have made pages, and I remember trying to search and find them all. But I knew that, like, maybe if I were in a position that, people were looking up to, that they would see that I'd gone through this and think they could message me or be like, Baylee knows somebody that I can talk to, or something that helped her, or she can send me a resource. So that was really the reason that I felt like it was my purpose to do the pageant. And yes, I wanted to get in shape. Yes, I wanted to have a moment to shine, but it became so much more. It became, a chance to relieve some of my own feelings by helping somebody else. Because I think that's really the only way we can heal, because, nobody can make it better, but it can be lightened and we can become stronger to hold that burden when we help somebody else.
Describe for me the feeling that you got when you realized that this platform is part of your calling now. That this is that, oh, you're Mrs. Utah America. Oh, and this is the platform you chose. It's almost like this is your platform, and now you are given the stage to talk about it. And that's almost divine. And you said you believe in God. So talk to us about that, how that became divine for you.
Absolutely. Because, when I look back at the pageant and all the qualified women I competed against, and that somehow this newbie who knew nothing and was very inexperienced, how if somehow a crown was placed on her head, that it had to be for a reason. And I remember right after I was crowned, I got the opportunity to go on a hospital call, which means once somebody at the hospital has given birth or is about to give birth to a baby that's not going to survive, we as Share Parents get a phone call and say that they need some companionship. So I was able to go to one, and there we provide, not only comfort and a listening ear, but we'll make molds of the baby's hands and feet so they can keep and hold those forever. We give them precious little clothing that will fit their bodies, and another set that the parents can take home and snuggle. And they only have a short period of time to make memories, so our job is just to help them make the most of that time. And so we made the molds, and then we have to take them home. We have to pour it up, and I felt confirmation that this is for me, because it's the same exact materials used to make impressions for dentistry. And so I was already familiar with the tools and with alginate and the cement and everything that is used to make these molds. And so I got to use that education and went home, made those molds, and then it became time to deliver them to that family. And I just remember walking up to their house, and even though it's such a heavy, deep topic, it is so sacred. And it feels like heaven is so close. And as soon as we walked in, and I remember being so impressed. She was holding herself together. It was just, maybe a week or two after the incident. And, I had served a mission for my church, which is, an opportunity that you have to sit down with strangers and talk about really deep, meaningful messages. And I felt that again, I served in 2014, and here it is 2023, and almost 10 years later, and I'm in the same position. I'm sitting on somebody's couch, don't really know them, but pouring our souls out to each other. And it came time to open those boxes, and that had the molds of her baby's hands and feet. And she didn't really know what to expect. And so as soon as we opened them, her composure changed, and she sobbed and just said, "My baby." So she held those and just kissed them. And I just remember thinking, all my experiences in my life, my mission, my dentistry, my friendships are preparing me for this. This is the next thing I need to do to serve, to give back to my fellow men, because it's meaningful and it's making a difference for her. That's all she's going to have of that baby the rest of her life here on earth. And I'm the one privileged to present it to her. So I would say that was the moment that I felt like this is why I had to win. I could have been a volunteer without winning the crown, but now that I have the crown, I feel like people are paying more attention. People are thanking me right and left for representing something that means so much to them that they aren't ready to be public about. And I can't tell you how many I get DMs, I get messages every day thanking me for what I'm doing, and I'm like, thank you for sharing how you feel with me, and I just feel like I I'm the blessed one who is being allowed to enter such precious territory, and you know even I was able to be on Good Things Utah this morning, and every time I talk about it, somebody says, "Oh, my friend, this just happened to my friend. Oh, this happened to my sister yesterday." It affects everybody. You're touched by it, whether you realize it or not. And I I remember being told when I first started practicing interviews that my platform wasn't a good one and that it was too depressing, that nobody would want to talk about dead babies. But I feel like not that it's about proving them wrong, but I don't believe that. I feel like it has been confirmed to me again and again. This is what I'm supposed to do.
How is this platform changing you?
My husband, who is my best friend and mentor, and he is my coach. I'm telling you, he is the one who helps me learn how to walk. It's like this congeniality. He's helping me transform, move my hips better and use my eyes better when I'm speaking and all these things. And the comments that he makes to me, which mean a lot because they're not empty compliments, is tells me how much I've developed, that I'm not the same woman I was when he first married me, that I've become so much more. And so I think that's the first confirmation that it's changed me. But I just remember before it happened to me, before I lost the baby, I kind of had the mentality, well, big whoop, you didn't really know the child. Time to get over it. Let's move on. I remember those feelings, and now I feel like an idiot. I just want to smack that girl in the head for ever thinking that, because it it's not something you get over, and it's something that you need to talk about the rest of your life, because you talk about your living children, and that's how you raise your children and take care of them. And since you can't physically take care of your angels, talking about them is really the only way you know how. And so I think that's the number one way I've changed, is the empathy that I have. And I can identify you know lost parents in public now. Sometimes you know lost parents hold a teddy bear that has the same weight as their child was when they were born, and they'll carry them around, or they'll bring their picture to family pictures, or there's little things that I notice, or pins or tattoos that I pay attention to now, and I'm like, I know I need that. And that's beautiful and good for you. So it's hard to identify all of the changes, but I just think I'm a whole different person, to be honest.
What would you say to a listener or a viewer tonight who has experienced this and didn't realize the resources are out there that you're talking about, and they just feel alone and empty and embarrassed, or have shame and guilt and all this? What would you say? Look right in the camera to them, and what would Baylee share from her heart to that woman tonight?
I think the first thing is to not minimize or justify the experience. Like, don't ever say, well, at least it was only this far along, or, at least I'll be able to try again, or there's no reason to minimize it, because whether you lost the baby at 6 weeks or 41 weeks, it's a loss and it shatters your world. It's likely the worst thing you've ever experienced. So own it. That's okay. And the next thing I would say is talk about your baby. It's okay if someone doesn't know how to react, because they're honestly just waiting to see what you'll do. So talk about your baby. Talk about what happened, because if you keep it inside, we all know how that will go. You'll explode. You'll self implode. You will not heal. And everybody grieves differently. So maybe that isn't the best way for you, but I found 99% of people just need to talk about their baby as if they're real. And they are real, and just because you can't see them doesn't mean your experience didn't suck. And you are valid in what you're saying. And I don't want to put a pin in this, because for some reason my computer is dying too fast. So I'm gonna go get my cord real quick so I don't lose you. Hold on one sec.
You're fine. So while she's going to get the cord, so I actually know Baylee's dad, Corey Toon. He and I went to high school together. He was a year older. He was the same age as my sister. And so I didn't know him per se. I knew of him. I knew some of his friends. And then I went to a fundraiser for Eswatini, and we raised money, the former Swaziland. And the first year I wasn't able to go. And then I went the next year. And then that's when Baylee was there with her dad. And I just want to show that picture again, Baylee. And I want you to describe this picture for me, because this picture says a lot about you. Tell me about this picture.
Oh my goodness. I can tell you the exact thought I had in that moment. Luckily it was 2019, so it wasn't yet the fiery rage of 2020. We all know what that means. But I just remember at that time feeling like there was so much judgment in the world and so much division, and just society pointing out all the million ways we were different from each other. And then you know how long of a trip that was. That was the furthest point of the planet Earth that I had gone. And
that literally is the other side of the world, all the way around, and then the other half of the world.
Yeah.
It literally is the other side of the world.
Yes. And I just remember thinking, okay, look at everything that's different than my life. This climate is different. The way they live is different. The way they look is different. But then I was looking at their habits, and I was like, but they are so much like me. Their little things they do, all they want is to play. They want to laugh. They want to have fun. They want to eat. They want to be loved and have physical touch. They want to feel safe and have a house. And I was like, wow, we are so alike, actually. Even though I never could have imagined this place. I have an idea what Africa's like, but now that I'm here and I see it's real, I was like, I couldn't be further away, but I feel so close to these people because we are so similar. And these children are hungry, and I felt hunger, and all they want is just to fill their bellies. And so just watching them just eagerly pick up handfuls of that rice and beans and just eat it as fast as they possibly could. I was just like, I I could easily put myself in their shoes, and they are like me and I am like them, and all they want is to feel safe. And they but they didn't feel anything different about that. They were just so happy to have the food. And then right after that, we got up and we got in a circle and started dancing and singing, and they loved me. And it was just immediate pure love. And it wasn't because I will I didn't even deserve their love, but they instantly loved me. And I was like, why can't we do that? Just at home. Why do we have to compare and size each other up and have to, be better than one another and dislike someone who has more than we do? That's kind of a cultural thing here. And there I just felt like they just wanted to play with my hair. They wanted to hug me, and that's all I wanted to give back to them. And and I think that is where that seed of empathy started growing, that has, snowballed into what I feel now. That, now that I'm encountering people who are so different than me, but the common thread is that baby loss. I'm like, we really are children of God, and He created us all pretty much the same. And we all have, different physical struggles, maybe different mental struggles, but like our core beings are the same. And we just need to stick together and celebrate those similarities instead of picking apart the differences and hating each other for them. And that really got me through, the the chaos that was the pandemic. And pageantry, I would have thought was really competitive, and it was who can be better than the next girl. But honestly, I feel like all it has been is building each other up. And maybe I'm just lucky and I found a really great system to be a part of. But every single woman who I've interacted with has made me feel like $1,000,000. And I have nothing but love and desires for success for them. And so I think that's just what, life is about, is pure love. And once we can, put our pride away, that's when we start enjoying relationships. And so, yeah, I will remember that trip to Africa so much because it changed my way of thinking. It really did.
I remember something a friend of ours said, Mike Conti, when we were there. I remember he took Ava, and Adam had his daughter, and there were so many of you that were, with a parent. And it was just amazing when Mike said, and I just agreed. He said, we came to feed the children, and the children fed us. And I sense that's kind of what you're experiencing. You've got this platform as Mrs. Utah America to bless the lives of others, but you're receiving so much by giving that it's feeding you when you're trying to help others. And isn't that the miracle of love?
It really is. Like, yes, I put in work to, develop more muscle tone, to have better interview skills and things like that. But the real reason that I've changed is for all the love and compassion and lessons that others have given to me. Like, they're the ones who changed me. And the crown was for me. It wasn't so I could just give. I feel like it was for Baylee to be a better person. And I'm still, luckily, I still have to March of next year to keep developing, because heaven knows there's more for me to learn from everyone I'm interacting with. And they need to, selfishly, I want to be fed more because I know that I can be better. And each person inspires a change, who inspires an interaction to change something else. And it's just so cool to see the way that God's hands are just intertwined in everything, you know?
Well, I'm not being condescending, but after our experience in Eswatini together and getting to know you as we were in country there for a couple of weeks, I'm just proud of you. Proud of you for the woman that you are becoming. It's fun to watch. Sorry, I'm getting emotional, but just what you're talking about, the loss of children and grief. I have a really good friend. He just lost a 2-year-old son, drowned in a canal at football practice. And I remember a couple of weeks ago as I walked into the funeral, and it was an open casket for that little 2-year-old boy, and he's got his little faux hawk, and I mean, it just crushed me. And I see what it's doing to that family. And so this is really raw. And then just reminiscing a little bit about our experiences in Africa. And you just exude love. So thank you for that. And I hope that our listeners and our viewers can feel the love that you have for people, because I think that's your greatest talent.
Yeah, maybe I can't twirl a baton, but maybe I can show some love.
Oh, you do in everything that you do, and it's been fun to get to know your dad better. And in fact, our mutual friend Jason Orvis taught Oakley, your sister, and I how to scuba dive together. So we got certified to scuba dive together, and we've had experiences. Anyway, it's been fun the last few years to watch you learn and grow, get to know your family better. And I told you I'd sneak in a fun picture, and you can tell me a little bit about your dad.
Yeah, we have to talk about what we're eating because that's a big thing. It's called chicken dust, which means that this chicken was just like cooked on the side of a dirt road in a barrel. Not even sure exactly how, but it was famous for just being delicious, almost because it was seasoned with dust.
I
And
love that picture because I know how much your dad loves you and Oakley.
and if I'm being raw, you know, I was bitter towards my dad for a long time because, like I said, they divorced when I was little. And it was hard for me to compare my family life and how my dad didn't live in my house and I had to go back and forth between my parents. And I was bitter that, life looked different than I wanted it to. And I held those feelings of resentment toward him for a long time, up until high school. And then I remember there was a time where I just felt like it was time to love him for who he was and not for what he wasn't or what I wanted him to be. And that is when our relationship, oh my goodness, just bloomed. And he has been my best friend. When I, shortly after high school, went on that church mission to Spain, he was my number one pen pal. And we connected across the world. And, he speaks Spanish, and we were able to bond over that. And we just became so close. And he came and picked me up there after a year and a half of not seeing him. And that was the most joyous reunion. And we've continued that way. And so when we went to Eswatini, it was unique because I was married at that point. So I was not just his little girl anymore. And I would have loved more for my husband to go. He was just so committed to working really hard at his job, so he couldn't get away. And I'm so glad I took that chance, that opportunity to go with him and just have that one-on-one time, because there is a special bond between a father and a daughter, and especially one like him who loves me and cheers me on unconditionally. And I'm so I remember there at the pageant and him in the audience cheer me on and running up to the stage afterward. And I look forward to him doing that again in Las Vegas. And I know that he will always be my cheerleader. And so that picture that you showed means so much to me because we'd come a long way to get to a point where we're just having fun together, and people will say we look so much alike, and in this photo I can see it. And he could be so fun and spontaneous. And one thing about my dad is he is such a hard worker, so he's always on his phone, and which is admirable. And the greatest thing about Swaziland was like not having that internet.
I remember that. That was driving him crazy.
Yeah.
That drove him nuts.
So we just had these authentic, present experiences. And I wish everyone could go on an Eswatini trip, especially with someone who's special to them, because it changes you. It really does.
Well, we need to get back. I know COVID kind of put a hamper on what our mission was that we were all going to try to collectively do there and spend more time there and help the people of Eswatini. But I'm sure we'll get back. Yeah. We'll make that happen again. Baylee, you are an absolute gem, and I appreciate you being vulnerable today and sharing your story of loss, of grief, of love, and how it's impacted your life and how you've been able to help other people. Tell us what's coming up then this week. Is there any way we can follow the pageant, follow your progress? Tell us just a little bit more about that, and then how they can follow you on social media or connect with you if they need to.
Yes. Anyone is welcome to reach out to me, to DM, message, any form. I love it. And so my personal account is Baylee Demars, and that's on Instagram. And likewise, I have a second account for Mrs. America, or Mrs. Utah America. Yep. So just as you see there, Mrs. Utah America. And don't worry, I will be posting regularly. And like I said, it's a fashion show, so it's always fun to see, hair, makeup, dancing, and fun outfits, and a glamorous place. But keep up with the competition too. So, and I don't know any of these 50 women, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to come home with friends all across the nation. So please follow the journey. It'll be unlike anything I've ever done.
Well, that's a given. I know you'll have 51 new friends. Well, 50 friends, you being one of the 51. I'm assuming there's a Mrs. District of Columbia as well. So there's 51, right? Don't forget that.
There is.
Well, we'll be following you. We'll be watching you. Thank you so much again for being here with us today and just sharing who you are and the love that you have for people. And I know there's a lot of takeaways from today's conversation, and that'll be different for each person and what they can take away from this. What I'm taking away from this is, through it all, love is the answer. Whether it's the love we have for our family, a loss in our family, making amends with people in our family, love really is the answer.
It really is. And thank you for the love I've always sensed from you. You've cheered me on. And I might just follow up with you about emceeing this upcoming pageant. So just be looking out for that.
Well, I'm always honored to serve and use those little things God gave me. If I can use them in some benefit, I certainly always welcome any opportunity. But Baylee Demars, 2023 Mrs. Utah America, headed to Las Vegas this week for the big pageant. And her reign continues through March of 2024. Learn more about the platform that she's talking about, and just continued success, and give those cute boys viewers a big hug.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Have a great night, dear. Love you.
Love you.